Hey guys, Nathan Brendan Masters. This is just going to be a quick video. I might do another video later on, or maybe a live stream. I don't know right now. Just a basic video or live stream. But I did want to say a little bit about Stan Lee and give my condolences to the family. Stan Lee was the first person that I knew in comics, like the first actual person aside from the characters and things. I would see his name and everything in comic books. I didn't necessarily know what Stan Lee did. I just knew Stan Lee was the guy that presented the story. He would always, in the comic books it would say Stan Lee presents, Spider-Man, or Stan Lee presents this, in the little blurb that explained what the story was. And as a kid, I didn't really read the credits, or I may have read them, but I didn't really pay much attention to what they were. I would jump directly into the story. So when Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends came on, Stan Lee would narrate it. And that's when I first heard the voice of Stan Lee. So I remember there was a comic book convention I had to be maybe 10 or 11, and there was a comic book convention here in Chicago, and that was before Wizard World took it over. It was just the Chicago Comic Con, and I saw that Stan Lee was staying here, that he was here, or that he would be at the convention, and the convention was at a hotel. So I took a chance that he would be staying in the hotel, that had, in the same hotel with the convention. And I called the hotel and I asked for, I'm not sure that Stan Lee knew how famous he actually was, because I called the hotel and asked for Stan Lee and they transferred me to his room. But I was a kid, so I didn't know what I was going to actually say when I spoke to Stan Lee. What the heck was, what was I supposed to say? So I did actually speak to Stan Lee for probably under a minute or so. He was very nice, and I told him I was a fan and I thought it was great. He said thank you, and he said he had to go because he had to take care of some business, which I'm sure he did, because it's a comic book convention. And so that was my encounter with Stan Lee. When I got older, of course, I would go to comic book conventions and I would see Stan Lee and go over it. One time, a friend of mine, we were coming from a comic book convention, and a friend of mine literally just saw Stan Lee just walking over to the hotel. Just like and I guess if you didn't exactly know what to look for, he could just blend in with, the other people. But we were walking to the train, and I heard a lot of commotion behind me, and my friend is like, "Isn't that guy?" Because he doesn't at that time. That particular friend was an artist, but he wasn't really into comic books. Comic books were kind of new to him, but he's like, "Isn't that guy?" And we all turned around, and it was Stan Lee, and he just, like, the minute someone mentioned it was Stan Lee, he just got mobbed. It was insane. But I would see Stan Lee on and off at comic book conventions. I think I remember someone saying he did one on and one off. So like one year he would be there, the next year he wouldn't, and then so on. So I would actually see him at the conventions. The last time I saw him at a convention was probably, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe in 2012 or 13. I think that was the last convention. It's been a long time since I've actually gone to a comic book convention, but that was the last time I saw him. And he would have his bodyguard with him, or his helper. So Spider-Man was probably the first comic book character that I actually saw on a regular basis outside of Batman. Of course, Batman had the Adam West TV show, But I would see Spider-Man everywhere. Like when I was a kid, he was on the Electric Company. He would just appear in random places. So you would see Spider. You would get those little comic books that were in the library, or your teachers would give them to you, and they were like the little PSA comic books. You knew they were going to be something iffy because your teacher was giving them to you. But Spider-Man continues to be one of my favorite mainstream superheroes, particularly on the Marvel side. And even though I tend to be more of a DC Comics fan, without a doubt, Stan Lee and Marvel Comics had a big influence in me deciding to get into comics. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about this, even though I know, probably everybody on the comic book side of YouTube is making this video, but I do think it's definitely well deserved. He and his creations touched and inspired a lot of people, including myself and probably anybody else making comic books today, particularly here in America. So other than that, I'll probably talk to you guys later on. Until then, enough said.